bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go!
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50-plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go! Go!
And a good Tuesday morning, Birds fans. Appreciate you streaming in bright and early with the Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365. After a hopefully nice, lengthy, relaxed Memorial Day weekend, we're back and ready to talk football and actual football on the field. OTAs, Eagles this week. Oh, we got plenty to do over the next 2 hours. Johnny Mac, how was your Memorial Day weekend?
Uneventful. So I got you beat. You got to work too much. Got some. We won't talk about it, but
we can talk about it. I got no problems. I want to thank who's my guy here, Fred Weber, who just streamed in and said, "Wakey, wakey, Jody, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood." Oh, I've been awake for 3 hours. Wakey, wakey, not an issue today. When the police come knocking on your door at 5 o'clock in the morning, it kind of gets you up and ready for the day.
Yeah, they were bound to catch up with you, Joe, at some point.
They weren't looking to catch up with me. They thought they were, but they weren't. My daughter had her car stolen in Philadelphia last night, and whoever took it went on a joyride and crashed it, and other cars and everything else. So they got the vehicle identification number and Joseph McDonald, New Jersey. So the police in my town came knocking on my door at 5 o'clock in the morning and said, "Hey, do you know your car's been stolen?" "No, there are 2 cars right there in the drive." "Oh, my daughter's car." "Yeah." And you got to deal with all this stuff. So I'll be talking with insurance agents and repairmen for the rest of the day when we finish this up. But, I've been up for hours. Don't sweat. It wasn't Jody Mack missing the alarm this morning. No. I've been ready to go for several hours here on Birds 365. And, we got a lot to get into. OTAs begin today for the Philadelphia Eagles. 30 of the 32 teams started last week. The Eagles and the Bengals push it back, and they'll get underway today. 3 days of workouts, actual team activities. They were together as team last week, but that was just phase 2. No team, no from the line of scrimmage, all just drills and exercises and weightlifting and the like. What do the Eagles need to accomplish the next 3 days here, Johnny Mac?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, this is what we kind of talked about. You give the Eagles the benefit of the doubt, but look, I mean, it is what it is. They have 6 OTAs, as you mentioned, and this is phase 3, which is basically no live contact, obviously, at all permitted during the offseason. But this is the first time you can have team drills, 11 on 11 if you want, 7 on 7, 9 on 7. So all that kind of typical training camp stuff. But they're only doing 6 of them. You can do 10. And they don't have a mandatory minicamp. One of 2 teams, them in Cincinnati, are the only 2 teams not having mandatory work. They're very cognizant, particularly of soft tissue injuries, particularly ramping up. You add into it, very long season. Today's also, I believe, a good day to have Russell Baxter on. We don't have Russell today, but he's the numbers guy. I believe it's 100 days away from the NFL season today. Time goes quick when you go to the Super Bowl, man. So it is really a shortened off season. My only concern is this. Again, you give the Eagles the benefit of the doubt because how well it worked out last year. They've used the same since Nick Sirianni has gotten here. They've scaled back the offseason work. But this year they're counting on more young players. And young players, you got to get up to speed. Jason Kelce was on his podcast. You know, he and Travis are two of the few players that say, hey, we love Thursday games because we don't practice but they're veteran players. They know it. You're not teaching Jason Kelce, Travis Kelce anything. They've seen everything. So for them, yeah, meaningless off-season work. Meaningless. And I don't say that lightly. I mean, it's not going to factor into them at all. Probably just save their bodies a little bit. Young players, I don't know. And it's still a veteran laden team. You know, I'll say the same thing about Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox and Lane Johnson. Not concerned at all about those guys. But, you know, you need Cam Jurgens to step up. You need Nakobe Dean to step up. You need Jordan Davis to take on a bigger role. You need rookies like Sidney Brown and Jalen Carter to take on significant roles. Could it affect them? Maybe. I mean, they have to count on more younger players this year than last season.
And the other thing about the Eagles, and I was a guy who sat here and questioned their whole less is more theory of off-season work. But you're right. I've got to eat it, and I got to give the Eagles every benefit of the doubt because they turned it into a Super Bowl appearance with a tie game with 59 minutes and 50 seconds to go. So how can I sit there and go, I told you the Eagles did it wrong? No, they did it right. It worked for them. Will it happen again this year? Only time will tell, and we'll evaluate it at the end of the season. But coming into it, you go, all right, the Eagles going to do what they're going to do, and I can't second guess what they're doing. But there are some differences from both Nick Sirianni's first year and last year going into the season. They are having a roster turnover here, John, and we knew about it. They knew about it. They said it was actually a strategy that they would get compensation picked for because they knew they were going to lose as many free agents as they did, which they did, which means new guys are going to be tasked to play. Some of them were here as Eagles last year. Some of them played some of them played sparingly at best, Nakobe Dean. And others have seen their roles filled by guys coming in from the outside who have never been a Philadelphia Eagle before, never worked with this coaching staff before. We'll see if there's a talent drop-off. We think it's apparent at some positions like Nicholas Morrow at linebacker. We'll see about the addition of safety and the safeties that they brought in, replacing both Epps and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. You believe the Blankenship's going to step in and be able to win a job, but he's got to do that. He's got to win it first. I don't think it's just handed to him. There's roster turnover on this team, and you've got two new coordinators. That's what happens when you go to a Super Bowl. You lose important members of your coaching staff because other teams want their services. So it is, even though we judged the success the Eagles had last year, which was outstanding, you also have to say, well, how much different is this year going to be? How much do they need to incorporate new players and new verbiage and schemes and everything else? It isn't just like, all right, roll the footballs out and it's the same exact Eagle team that lost the Super Bowl by this much. No, there's been some significant change here, so they got their work cut out for them and they got work ahead of them.
Yeah, I agree. And that's what I said with, counting on more young players and the coordinators you brought up as well. I should have mentioned that. I mean, you're also, look, I don't think there's going to be significant changes on either side of the ball from a philosophy or a schematic standpoint. Obviously, Brian Johnson was already here, so he understands what this offense is. Sean Desai was brought in because of his history with this particular defensive philosophy. So I don't think there's going to be massive change, But we've already seen one change, when you move from coaches, just terminology. Everybody said, well, the terminology is different because Sean is been in different places and is inserting different sort of keywords for each particular defense, the same defense, but all of a sudden you got that tick, maybe you take, oh, that's not the same as it was under a name we shall not mention moving forward because I'm tired of it. But the fact that Sean Desai is a new defensive coordinator and you have so many new pieces, I'm a little bit more concerned with that side. At least on the offensive side, you're talking about two players, right? You're talking about replacing Miles Sanders and replacing Isaac Seumalo. And maybe you have some competition at the third receiver spot. But it's pretty solid when you look at a typical NFL team when it comes to turnover on the offensive side. Defensive side, 5 starters. You can debate how good TJ Edwards and Kaiser White, Marcus Epps are. You can debate, the playmaking skills of CJ Gardner-Johnson. You can debate Javon Hargrave versus Jalen Carter, but that's a lot of change. That's a lot of turnover and different defensive coordinator, which people think they want, and we'll see if they want it when they see it. But Sean Desai, it's got to be classroom, because they're not going to be on the field. So you mentioned Reed Blankenship, second-year player. Nakobe Dean, second-year player. Nicholas Morrow's a veteran, but he's new to this particular system. Jalen Carter, obviously a rookie. Sidney Brown, a rookie. Terrell Edmonds, new to this system. It's a lot of teaching to do.
Right. A lot to incorporate with a new defensive coordinator. Might not be a different philosophy, but verbiage, players, there's change there. And it's something the Eagles are going to have to get to work on. And they'll start today. Quickly, do you guys get any access to the player during OTAs, or is that completely?
No, Thursday. They have to open up one day a week. So we're going to get over the next 2 weeks, one day this week, which is going to be Thursday, and one day next week, which obviously we don't know yet. And this is the time of year we get to see the whole practice. So we'll get to see a significant portion of, what they do, which isn't much, but at least you'll see Jalen Hurts throwing the football. That'll excite people. Obviously, you're not going to learn too much about offensive, defensive linemen because there's no contact. Running backs, there's no contact. But you can get a little feel for, the 7-on-7 guys, the quarterback, the receivers, the defensive backs. You can get a little bit of feel for them. Everything else, they've scaled back so much, it's tough to get a handle on it. You might see some of the quickness of Jalen Carter because he just, explodes off sort of film with his quickness. You might get a feel for that, but not much.
And that will be Thursday. So Johnny Mac will be back with all his insights on Friday. But we'll get reports out of there the next couple of days, even though it won't be directly. Eyeball reports from you guys because you're not allowed in until Thursday. All right. One other topic I want to hit before we punch up our first guest, our bud CBS Sports, is Jeff Kerr. John, last week on the show, early last week, I said kudos to the Eagles fans because those here on our stream, the callers I get to WIP and on my social media, the hue and cry for Devante Adams was less than I actually thought it was going to be because he was talking about not being happy and the philosophy of the team and his buddy Kerr no longer the quarterback. And he certainly was planting some seeds that he might not be the happiest camper in Las Vegas. So usually when that level of a talented player starts to hit the rumor mill, could be available, everybody. And the Philadelphia Eagles have interest. The Philadelphia Eagles should have interest. The fan base says it's Howie season. Go get him, Howie. We need Devante Adams. And there wasn't that big a buzz here from the Philadelphia fan base, which I appreciated because they're not getting Devante Adams. Not only does he have a contract that would be very difficult to deal with, as you continued to harp on last week, and you were right, there's only one football. And you've got A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert and Jalen Hurts running the ball. You can only, unless you're going to move it 3 yards at a time down the field every single play, 3 1/3 yards, and get 10 yards every single. They're not going to be enough plays to go around to make a guy like Devante Adams happy. So rightfully so, the Eagle fans didn't start the Devante must be an Eagle chant. This last couple of days, a player of Devante's level, below but not far, and at one point I thought he was the best wide receiver in the entire National Football League, good couple of years ago, but DeAndre Hopkins released by the Arizona Cardinals, so you don't have to pay the price that you would have to pay to acquire the player like they did with Devante Adams. He's a free agent because I win any team he wants, and he did go on record and listed 5 quarterbacks he'd like to play with, one of which was Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles. So yes, we should be getting DeAndre Hopkins here, a little louder cry than Devante Adams. I'll put it to you this way, Johnny Mac. Percentage chance DeAndre Hopkins signs with the Philadelphia Eagles.
2% chance.
2. Okay, good.
I
was going to be below 5 myself. I might be 3, but we're in the exact same ballpark.
Yeah. That's the bigger test. Your Devante Adams, I'm not as impressed because that was really just, somebody popping off. And I think everybody understands that, if he's not the best receiver in football, he's certainly top 5. And, it would cost so much to get him from a trade standpoint, and he's not getting released. Now, this is a guy on the street, so that's the bigger test. He's available. And I think that, I don't know about you, and you've been on the radio throughout the holiday weekend, but I've gotten plenty of people already. Let's go get DeAndre Hopkins. And I'm like, I've started my hashtag no, because I get this so much. It's in 95% of the time, it's no with the big name trap, the big name test, whatever you want to call it. It's not always no, but in this particular instance, it's pretty hard no, because and it got further fueled because DeAndre, as you mentioned, talked about 5 quarterbacks he'd like to play with on the I Am an Athlete podcast with Brandon Marshall, I believe. And Jalen Hurts was obviously one of them, as he should be, by the way, coming off a runner-up MVP season. But I would say, all right, I'd like to take Margot Robbie out. So what? Who cares? He likes the player. He'd like to play with him. He'd also like to get paid. He considers himself one of the best receivers in football still. Now, he's had 2 seasons where injuries and issues of that nature. So here's all the hurdles you would kind of have to pass, Jody. You would have to, DeAndre would have to, take a discount to go ring chase. So say 1 year, $5 million. You really think that's going to happen? He'd have to be okay with getting a Quez Watkins level of traffic from a standpoint of, now he's a little bit better. So you can argue, well, there's a little bit of an uptick, but he's the wide receiver 3. And if he's not the wide receiver 3, he's a 5-time All-Pro. Why the hell isn't he the wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2? I really think this is whether you want to call it fantasy football mindset, whether you want to call it video game mindset, on Madden, nobody's harping. You can build your own team. You can have all the players you want. Nobody's complaining. In real life, if you have a 5-time All-Pro and you say, hey, DeAndre, you want to come play here for a pittance from what you can get elsewhere? And by the way, Kansas City wants him. They've already talked about trading for him before he got released. Buffalo might want him. They're Super Bowl contenders. They could offer a bigger role and therefore bigger money. 2%.
Yeah, it might be 3, but we're in the same exact ballpark.
It's my milk, 2%, baby.
I will, although all the factors certainly are going to come into play, the biggest one for me is, and if I said this once, I said it 5 times over the last 3 days, he's going to get paid. Nothing that DeAndre Hopkins has said to me that he's a ring chaser, that he's a guy who's desperate to get himself a Super Bowl ring. I think he wants to play with, shockingly, the quarterbacks he threw out there that he'd like to play with are the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Therefore, their teams are the best teams. So, he wants to go play for a good team. No, he wants to play for a good quarterback because he wants the ball a lot. He wants to get 100 catches. He wants to get 1,400 yards. He wants to get 20 touchdowns. He's not coming here for $5 million because, the Eagles give him a chance to win a Super Bowl. I don't believe that for a millisecond.
No.
I think DeAndre Hopkins is still in his major earning stage of his career. He was scheduled to make 14, 15 million this past year for Arizona, and over which you got a whole big signing bonus, so you already got that money. So we're not going to start a GoFundMe page for him, but my read from the outside is DeAndre Hopkins wants to get with a good quarterback. But if it comes down to a top 5 quarterback or a top half of the league quarterback, and in one place he's going to make $5 million, and in the other place he's going to make $15 million, DeAndre Hopkins is going to end up with that middling quarterback because he's going to want to get paid. And the Eagles are in better cap shape than the Chiefs or the Bills, a couple of the other teams that have been put out there. Howie's not going to spend that on a third wide receiver. Howie is so ingrained in value as per roster and where you do spend and the balance to the amount that you spend. He's not going to lay out 12, 13, $14 million. And he sure as hell can't do one of his famous Howie deals where he goes 5 years, contract years disappear. Because, yes, right now the Eagles are in good cap shape. They can get in bad cap shape real fast because of some of the contracts they have. Not happening. Don't get overly excited. DeAndre Hopkins not coming to the Philadelphia Eagles. And the biggest reason is he's going to get paid somewhere else. He's not going to get the kind of money.
Now, if he's still on the street and somebody gets an injury at OTAs, then it's a different conversation. And by somebody, I'm talking about
Devante Smith
or Devante Smith.
High ankle sprain you're talking?
No, I'm not talking about it. I'm talking about Achilles. I'm talking about something significant. Then everything's on the table. Other than that, no. You can't just spend the money you're going to need as an insurance policy and say, well, in case so-and-so gets hurt. That's another thing I hear all the time. Well, you need insurance. That's not realistic. Yeah, you'd love it. You have 53 roster spots. I talk about roles all the time. Wide receiver 3s have roles. You don't have wide receiver 3s as insurance policies for your 2 all-star receivers in front of them. You can't have everything.
Nope. And DeAndre Hopkins is one of the things, sorry, Eagle fans, Philadelphia will not be getting. All right, first time out of the day here on Birds 365. I see Jeff Kerr in our waiting room ready to jump aboard. We got a bunch we got to talk to Jeff Kerr about. He's next here on Birds 365.
Go, 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 go.
Go to Ocean for our 5th birthday. Go for the parties and the payouts. Go for the dining and the unwinding. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the win.
Go, 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 shorty. It's your birthday. We gon' party like it's your birthday.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News?
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
All right, did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really, don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, go to left, fake a mom. Mama, go up, mama!
She did it.
Again?
You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Appreciate you streaming in on this Tuesday morning after a nice long Labor Day weekend. Memorial Day weekend. You got Birds 365 with McMullen and McDonald. And we are joined by Jeff Kerr from CBSSports.com. How was your Memorial Day weekend, Kerr?
Oh, it was good. As a racing fan, I got to see my favorite team win the Indy 500 and the Coke 600. So it's been a great weekend for me.
You spend time watching racing.
That's all I do, Jody. That's what I do in the offseason.
Football, racing, bowling. That's your life is what you're telling us.
Well, baseball and basketball, too.
Oh,
but
baseball, too.
I've been
Baseball,
boycotting.
basketball, everything. You are well-rounded, Jeff Kerr. I got to cut it off at some point.
I can't. I don't get enough of this stuff.
F1 racing is very popular now because of the Netflix show, I guess. Premier Cup, Premier League, I kind of enjoy, but I don't really understand it. But I got to cut it off at some point, Jeff. God bless you.
Well,
Game 7, I was excited by that, but it was over pretty quickly.
Oh, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that because still the Boston Celtics haven't won anything more than the Sixers have. They just went a round further. That's it.
Yeah, that's why they play the games. By the way, to all reporters out there, and you can double down on this, Jeff, stop talking about logistic stories. Oh, Miami's they're not flying back. They're so cocky. They're making plans to travel to Denver. Yeah, duh. That's what you do. That's what you don't just
did this.
Oh, we won. Oh, crap. We got to get travel plans. Yeah, that's not how it works. But every stinking year we have these stories. It drives me insane.
I saw the two silliest tweets about this. One was the Heat flying to Denver, and two, our buddy Elliott saying that no Boston or the Lakers in the finals, it's going to be terrible for the ratings. I hope the ratings skyrocket because of this.
God bless Elliott.
We shall see. As far as the whole logistics thing, both you guys help me out. My memory is failing. Frank Reich off the Buffalo bench, greatest comeback in postseason of all time. Was that against the Houston Oilers? Does that go back far enough to be the Houston Oilers? My buddy Glenn
Warren Moon, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that was against Warren Moon in the wild card round, 92.
Yeah.
My buddy Glenn Macnow was in Buffalo in the press box, and the Buffalo, the Houston PR guy or the scheduler or everything, very loudly was making plans for the next week's game. And all the Buffalo guys are sitting there and listening to him. Yeah, we'll take flight. And, man, when Buffalo came back, he said, I never saw someone shrink in a press box like that guy did. He couldn't get far enough underneath the desk because everybody was passing snide comments. How's that plane schedule working for you there, Jeff? Whoever it was. But we digress. All right, Jeff Kerr, same question I got for you that I asked John McMullen. Percentage chance DeAndre Hopkins becomes a Philadelphia Eagle.
I'll go 30.
Wow, you're much more than me and Johnny.
Whoa, I was at 2%.
I was at 3.
I don't think he's coming here. There are too many teams that A, need a receiver, and B, there are enough Super Bowl contenders that could use him. Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore. I'm sure him and the by the way, that was another story that kind of drove me nuts this weekend. Jalen Hurts is following DeAndre Hopkins on Instagram. Yes, so is Josh Allen, so is Patrick Mahomes, so is Lamar Jackson, so is Aaron Rodgers. There are a lot of people following DeAndre Hopkins. They're all buddies.
Yeah. I think it was Jokic was talking about social media. Get the hell off social media. Stop. The only people on social media should be people that need to be there for their jobs. Or, I mean, it's poison. And part of that is, now players have at times used social media to express disharmony with their organizations. You know, the famous, so-and-so took the logo off all their social media to indicate they're angry.
Oh, yeah.
But as far as players following other players, I mean, big shocker, they're friends. And when you're a star player like DeAndre Hopkins, but I'm more interested in the 30%, Jeff. How are the Eagles making A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and DeAndre Hopkins happy if Howie Roseman can get this 30% deal done? I mean, how is that going to work?
Well, that's the thing. You're not going to make all three of those guys happy. But I think the 30% comes from all the stuff he has said he wants to go to. A stable front office, a winning culture, the Eagles, a good defense, the Eagles. Oh, and he mentioned Jalen Hurts second of all the quarterbacks he wanted to play with. Josh Allen was first, by the way. But just because all this is possible, and the Eagles do have $13.5 million in cap space, I just don't think that it's logical because they do need help at linebacker. I think they could use another safety. But if he really wanted to come here and said, I'll take less money to come here, I doubt he's going to do that because there are teams that are going to offer him more money and a chance.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Jeff. And Jody knows this. I say it all the time. I always say coaches are not under oath on the podium. Why do we assume that DeAndre Hopkins is under oath on the podcast that he said, I want this, I want this, I want this. Whereas I would bet biggest check, that's where he's going.
That's where he's going. Write it down right now.
And this is what's tough for me because Buffalo and Kansas City don't really have the cap space to make this work. Kansas City used their cap space on Donovan Smith, and Buffalo just doesn't have enough. Now, Baltimore's got some cap space to use on another receiver, and I'm sure Lamar is probably telling Eric DeCosta, hey, you know what? We got some room here. Let's add him in with Odell, Bateman, and Flowers, and let's go for it. And it's what's crazy is people are talking DeAndre Hopkins to Dallas. I don't think that's going to be a possibility, but Dallas has the money to go pay this guy if they want to do it.
Yeah, that would be interesting. The Cowboys, because obviously I think, if you ask me who the three best teams are in the NFC, I'm going to go Eagles, Niners, Cowboys. And, that might be sort of a seismic type shift between Dallas and Philadelphia. This is a very good player. Now, he's had a couple down years from his standpoint, but 5-time All-Pro. Maybe the best hands in the business. You team him up with CD Lamb. That might make Eagles fans a little wary.
I would say this too. Watch the Cleveland Browns. He does have a good relationship with Deshaun Watson.
Cleveland, yeah.
Maybe Detroit. Maybe. I don't know, though, because they do have Jameson Williams eventually coming back, but Detroit's all in.
Yeah, how long did he get suspended for?
6 games.
6 games? Yeah, that's tough. But you can't, even 6 games, you can't base he's going to be back, and you can't base your whole season on 6 games and say, we got to go get a receiver. But Detroit's got an opportunity. You're right about that.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at it as, look at the contenders, and I actually did this for CBS Sports on Friday. Look at the contenders or the teams with the quarterbacks he mentioned and the likely possibility ranked 1 to 5. I put Baltimore as 1. I had the Eagles at 4. I said don't count them out because it's the Eagles. You can't count them out. And I think I mentioned more of the cap space and his willingness to play with Jalen Hurts, but I also mentioned the number 1 and number 2 receivers for each team. And I'm like, well, how are you going to keep A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith happy, Dallas Goedert happy? It's difficult. I think the Eagles had problems doing that last year.
Yeah.
Right. And again, I've been beating this like a drum all weekend. We always talk about average annual salary, and because that's the easiest way to just understand it, but there's much more to it in guaranteed money and signing bonus and everything else. If the Chicago Bears offer him significantly more than the Chiefs or the Bills or the Eagles or the Ravens or wherever, he'll start to praise Justin Fields. Mark my words. If he's getting twice as much money from the Chicago Bears, who had the worst record in the National Football League last year, oh my, that Justin Fields, he's coming into his own. He's got one of the best. Oh yeah, DeAndre Hopkins will put a new scouting report out on the Bears quarterback when he signs with them because they offer him significantly more money than anybody else and the ability to catch balls more than any of those other teams. Just write it down. He's going with the team that offers him the most money. All right, so if we put DeAndre Hopkins aside, Johnny Mac's going to be down there Thursday. Don't know if you are as well. When you get your first look at the 2023 Eagles, what's the first thing you're zeroing in on in their OTA on Thursday?
Well, the first thing I'm watching is who's going to be starting at linebacker. I know Nakobe Dean is, but who's going to be with him, John McMullen? Who's your guess?
Nicholas Morrow. Who else could it be?
I mean, you think it's going to be Nicholas Morrow?
It could be one of those default to the guy that's been here for a quick glimpse. But, who's going to be Christian Ellis? I mean, they are so thin at linebacker.
I have a higher upside in Christian Ellis than I do Nicholas Morrow at this point.
Man.
Well, I don't necessarily disagree with you because I think the ceiling is pretty low for Nicholas Morrow, but the floor, he knows how to play. He knows how to play this defense specifically. And Christian Ellis and Sean Bradley, I'll throw him in there. And even Davion Taylor, if you want to throw him back in the mix. I don't know. I mean, who has the most experience? Davion Taylor. Now, Davion Taylor has a history with DJ Elliott, the new linebackers coach. So I would be surprised if it's not Nicholas Morrow, first rep in 7-on-7s next to Nakobe Dean.
They need a linebacker. They really need a linebacker.
Yeah. Maybe Sean Desai throws us all a curveball. I'll throw this at you. I think we're going to see more 3 safety looks.
Oh, I could see that. Oh,
Reed
definitely.
Blankenship, Terrell Edmonds, Sidney Brown. It's a lot to put on a rookie, but
I just feel like Sidney Brown's going to be starting week 1 for some reason. I don't know why I think that, but you're right with the 3 safety thing. It'll definitely be a possibility.
Yeah. And Terrell Edmonds playing pseudo linebacker. I could see that.
Let me get your thoughts on a guy whose name you just threw out. If Davion Taylor, with the linebackers who are ahead of him on the depth chart right now, and a new coach coming in for his position that he's got a working relationship with, if he can't crack the starting lineup, is he a lock to make the team?
No.
Not at all. I was thinking about this the other day. Do you consider the Eagles 2020 draft a major success because of who they got in the second round, or do you consider it a failure because of Jalen Carter and Davion Taylor and a couple other picks?
I consider it a success because they found a franchise quarterback.
they got a top 5 quarterback out of it.
That's all that matters. I mean, you look at it. Yeah, I mean, they made a mistake in the first round. There's no way around it. They made a bad mistake. But, all right, Minnesota got the player, right? Where are they? All right, they had a good season. He's been a phenomenal
any better than
player.
What they were.
No, I mean, all right, first round playoff exit. What are we talking about here? We're talking about we should be talking about the larger picture. Justin Jefferson's a great player, but there's so many domino effects that people, I talk about this with Jody all the time, Jeff. The assumption that Justin Jefferson was going to have the same numbers here is so flawed. Number one, he was going to be a good player. He's a great player.
I think he would have been okay here year one.
Yeah. I mean, Kirk Cousins is a high volume thrower. We talk about it all the time, 4,000 yards every year. The numbers are going to be there. If Kirk Cousins is a quarterback, not necessarily the wins, but the numbers are going to be there. But then, you know, you're not drafting Devante Smith because you already have a great receiver. You're not getting A.J. Brown probably because you already have a great receiver. Who knows how things
wait, John, which one is it? He wouldn't have put the numbers up year one, so they would have stayed away from Devante Smith. They took Rager and they took Devante Smith anyway, so it wasn't because
I said he was going to
draft pick on a wide receiver. They took a wide receiver with a first-round draft pick in successive years anyway.
No, I said he was going to be a good player. He wasn't going to. He's a great player. He wasn't going to be Jalen Rager here. I'm saying, you know, he put up 1,600 yards, at least 1,600, maybe more.
He set the rookie record for receiving yard, and then I think Jamar Chase broke it the next year.
Yeah, he's probably getting 1,000 here, and everybody's excited. He's a great player. Because he is a great player. I'm not saying he wouldn't be a great player. And once you get the great player, well, then you stop looking at wide receiver, and who knows what happens is all I'm trying to say. There's all these butterfly effects to certain things. So you might have the better receiver, because as good as Devontae Smith is, as good as A.J. Brown is, both of them, they're not Justin Jefferson. He's, if not the best receiver in football.
Now, if you draft Jefferson, we'll play the butterfly effect here. Say you're at 12 again, you trade up ahead of the Giants. You take Micah Parsons instead of Devonta Smith.
Well, yeah, it could work out even better. Who knows? But my point is, it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same, and the assumption is you're going to go in the same direction. They made a mistake on the first round pick. That we can all agree on. They hit a home run in the second round. They weren't even trying to hit a home run. They were trying to hit a double, but they hit a home run. So it worked out.
Yeah, the wind was blowing at their backs when they made that pick.
And despite the fact that John McMullen may have said ahead of time, I see Micah Parsons as an edge player.
Yeah,
he was an outside linebacker. He's an off-ball linebacker. Howie Roseman was not using the 12th pick of the draft on an offside.
Well, I think the Eagles are smart enough, and I don't know that. That's an interesting. I have to ask somebody that. That's an interesting.
I had to mess with Micah Parsons the other day. So he was complaining about how, I don't know if you follow him on Twitter, John, but he was complaining about how expensive like Universal Studios is. I'm like, he's so used to Hershey Park where it's like $100 to go for the day, not like 300. And then he mentions it like a couple hours later. He goes, "Yeah, I'm so used to just walking down the street to Hershey Park,
baby."
He and from what I heard, Micah Parsons was at Hershey Park quite a bit back when he was living in PA.
You know,
can't blame him.
Jody, I have to ask one of the Eagles scouts at some point what they looked at Micah Parsons for. I haven't asked that. Because never. It's interesting if they were looking at him as an off-ball linebacker or an edge rusher.
Yeah, I'm curious too, because I remember I talked to Devonta Smith a couple days before the draft, and he said, "Look, this is going to happen. Like, this is a very good possibility. They're trading up to get me." And I'm like, "Whoa, they're trading back up?" And he goes, "Well, they liked him." That's what he said. This is when Devonta talked a lot more than he does now. I think he learned his lesson about that over the years, but.
By the way, you're going to be in Allentown for the big softball classic?
I got to go see T.O., of course.
Is T.O. in this year's softball classic?
T.O. is playing. Terrell Evans is coming back. It's different now that he's an Eagle. A.J. Brown's back. Jalen Hurts is playing. I'm trying to remember. Oh, Slay's playing. I'm trying to remember.
Jake Elliott's going to be there. Ringer.
Did you see Jake Elliott basically shot like 600 or 700 par golf in the other day?
He's phenomenal golf.
He's great
phenomenal.
Golf.
He's tremendous at everything. It's absurd. He's the best ping pong player on the team. He's the best golfer on the team. He's the best softball player. Although Richard Rodgers might have had something to say about that. He was a great softball player. But Jake Elliott is, for those who don't know, is great at everything. Everything. It's
He's going to be that guy who randomly throws a touchdown pass in an NFL game.
Ooh,
I don't know about
interesting.
that, but
We'll keep an eye on that one.
Hey,
at
we've
some
seen David
point.
Akers run 30 yards in an NFL game before. I'm sure Jake Elliott can throw a touchdown pass.
you never know. You gotta have the grapefruits.
If we're
to
just
do
judging the Sirianni era, not that many gadget plays.
No, not a gadget coaching staff.
No.
By the way, I talked about that with Shane Steichen once. Not,
Yeah, he's not a gadget guy.
No, not a gadget guy.
And
maybe that changes.
A kicker throwing a touchdown pass would be considered a gadget play. All right, Jeff Kerr, our buddy compatriot Reuben Frank and his Reuben observations this week. The lead item was the hype around Jalen Carter when camp opens up today. He said he thinks it might be the biggest for an Eagle rookie since Donovan McNabb, because he rightfully pointed out Carson Wentz was the third string quarterback when camp opened up the year that he was the Eagles pick with the number 2 overall selection. So you could only get so hyped. You knew he's going to be the future. We had no bloody idea the future was going to be week 1 with 2 quarterbacks ahead of him, but that's the way it worked out. Can that be the case? Can he be the most hyped Eagle draft pick in 25 years when he's going to be a part-time player?
I think so. I actually kind of agree with Rube on that. So there are a couple players I remember going back in my youth here at training camp. McNabb was pretty hyped. I remember a lot of people went to Lehigh for the first time. I think it was only their second or third year in Lehigh when they went. And McNabb, everybody was watching. Everybody had the Polaroid cameras out, wanted to get pictures of McNabb. Everybody wanted McNabb's autograph. And I'll tell you who's another rookie that got a lot of hype too. Corey Simon, when he came out, he was number 6 overall pick. And there was a lot of hype for him. And then he had that big game against Dallas week 1 and had a great rookie year. But I would agree. I think McNabb was probably one of the more hyped rookies of at least my lifetime. I'm trying to think of others. Freddie Mitchell, there wasn't that much hype as I remember correctly. I remember he had a bad training camp and that kind of snowballed. Leo Shepard didn't play much. Sean Andrews was a lineman. So Lane
Johnson was the 4th pick of the draft, but he's an offensive right tackle, wasn't even a left tackle. So even though you surely should factor in where you're talking about being drafted in the first round, offensive linemen just aren't going to get that kind of attention.
Deshaun Jackson had a lot of hype, but he was a 2nd round pick too. So I agree with Rube on this one. I think there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on Jalen Carter because if we were, say, if this was January 1st, and if I would have told you the Eagles would have gotten Jalen Carter in the draft, I think everybody would be jumping up and down.
Well, they should be, as long as nothing happens off the field. I mean, I think he was the best player in the draft. I've said it from day one.
It's a game changer.
And the Eagles got him. There's reasons they got him. Obviously, we all know those reasons. Quarterbacks, to Jody's point, quarterbacks are always going to be hyped. But Carson had was Sam Bradford, Chase Daniel, Carson Wentz.
Number 3.
It's interesting. If Teddy Bridgewater doesn't get hurt, the season starts that way, by the way. Sam Bradford's the starting quarterback, and how that would have changed things, talking about butterfly effects.
I wasn't even remotely excited for that year. That was my first year covering the NFL, and I'm like, and they had me do a lot of Eagles stuff, and I'm just like, you know what, they're kind of punting on this year with the Bradford thing. It's, kind of getting the culture back, and then Teddy Bridgewater gets hurt, and all of a sudden Carson Wentz is starting. You're like, oh, okay. Now Eagles fans have a reason to watch all 16 games this year.
Yeah, it definitely worked out long run. They were a lot better than expected with a rookie quarterback who, by the way, didn't have a training camp because Carson got hurt. People forget that, and he was the 3rd string quarterback for most of it. And all of a sudden, he's got to show up week 1. I think they started 3-0 that season too.
They did. Remember they killed Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh was a good team that year, and they had the bye week, and then Lane had the suspension, and that was my running thing. Like, oh, the Eagles are like, I think they were 7-3 in games Lane Johnson played, and they didn't win a game at the end or something like that. I forget what the stat was.
But if you take away quarterbacks, and Donovan, who was going to be the guy, and everybody knew that. This is about, the biggest non-quarterback player they've gotten in many, many years, from a talent perspective. They're usually a pretty good team, so they're not at the top of the draft. This player would have won at the top of the draft, but didn't because of issues. I mean, worst case scenario, he would have been top 5. Worst case scenario. If he had no issues, I think he would have been number 1. I really believe Chicago just takes him with no issues. They need they needed a defensive player. They needed a difference maker on defense. They decided to go forward with Justin Fields. I mean, they got number 1 talent. So yeah, there's going to be expectations. I think it makes sense.
It does. And in terms of training camp hype, just overall players, not even draft picks. I mean, he's not going to be on that, like that Terrell Owens, AJ Brown level, but he's going to be up there. A lot of people are going to be watching him nationally to see what happens. And I have a feeling Jalen Carter is going to be that player we're looking at 2-3 years. And how did national guys are going to be like, how did teams pass on him? How did 8 teams pass on Jalen Carter? And they're going to forget about his offseason or his off-field situation.
If there are no reoccurrences.
Yeah, exactly. If there are no reoccurrences.
Then they go, how the hell did he go number 9? But if he's had issues and is suspended, they're going to go, yeah, the Eagles rolled the dice, and it might have crapped out on him. I want to reference 2 names you guys just threw out there. Teddy Bridgewater, Carson Wentz. Who's got the better chance to be the starting quarterback of the Las Vegas Raiders when the season gets underway this season, since Jimmy G all of a sudden's got a bad foot? He may never play a game for the Raiders. Somebody's got to be the Raiders starting quarterback, and they're 2 of the better free agent quarterbacks left out there. Either one of them going to end up in Vegas?
Tom Brady has a better chance of suiting up.
Door number 3, Tom Brady.
Just throw in Tom Brady. He's never going to go away. He doesn't even want the TV money coming this way.
Yeah. Now, I'll tell
you who's behind door number 3. As per our buddy Rick Saratella, Aiden O'Connell. He was a lot higher on O'Connell in the draft prospect and thought that he landed in the perfect situation. This was before we found out Jimmy G's foot is still screwed. He said he's going to get a chance to play in Vegas this year as a 4th round draft pick.
Yeah, I guess he's going to be the backup there, right?
Saratella was very high on him. I watched him play at Purdue. I thought he was okay at best. Rick was a much bigger fan than I was, but he thinks
I'll trust Rick's opinion on that, though. He watches these guys every day.
I will say this. I think Josh McDaniels is a one-trick pony, and that one trick is getting out of Tom Brady's way. And, if there's any way they can get him on the field, we've never had this instance before, right? I mean, part owner of the team coming down to play. I don't know how that works from a contract standpoint.
Antonio Brown tried doing this weekend, and he bailed out of it. I don't know if you heard that story, John.
The Albany Empire.
Yeah, and then he goes, well, the paperwork needed to be filed. I'm like, you're the owner. You don't need to do this. You can bypass every law in the league to play football.
See, I don't know if that's the case. That's probably the case in arena football, whatever that league that is. He could probably show up that weekday and play. With the NFL, there's got to be some things worked out.
I don't ever recall anybody coaching Paul Brown, but
if you guys read Florio this weekend on Pro Football Talk, any one individual owner can block Tom Brady from playing. If he is officially signed off and purchased his percentage of the Raiders, and they're saying that he has, but I don't know if the paperwork is all done and money exchange hands or whatever. If that has transpired, any owner, not they need a percentage of the owner, one says, nope, can't go from ownership to player, not going to allow it. They can stop Brady signing with the Raiders. He would have to turn around and sell back his portion of the team to become a free agent and then sign with the Raiders, but he cannot be a player and a part owner at the same time in the NFL.
Well, I think he would just divest to give it back to Mark Davis and then just give it back when he stops playing. I think that's easy to get around, but from the standpoint of the salary cap and how they have to work that stuff out, I mean, he could divest it and put it in a third trust, and there's all kinds of ways around that. But from the salary cap standpoint, what are they going to pay him? Is the NFL going to say, if they say because he's an owner, quote in quotes, are they going to say, well, we're going to pay him the league minimum and get around it that way? I don't think that would fly. So there's a lot of hurdles they would have to get over. But Josh McDaniels, that's all he's got, man. I think they're going to try to work it out. They can't do anything with Josh McDaniels unless he's getting out of Tom Brady's way.
Who's a worse coach, McMullen? Is it Josh McDaniels or Dennis Allen?
Josh McDaniels.
Yeah,
I think Josh McDaniels is a good offensive coordinator. I think Dennis Allen's a good defensive coordinator.
Yeah,
as far as managing people, yeah, I got to give it to Dennis Allen. And I'm not a big Dennis Allen fan.
Dennis Allen at least has a chance to be half decent this year because of his roster. We'll see, though.
Yeah, I'm not. I've been a non-McDaniels guy forever, so I'm not going to change my tune on that one now.
Eagles almost hired him.
Yeah. Remember that? They almost hired Jim Haslett, too, and Adam Gase, and a bunch of other people I don't want to mention.
Penn McAdoo.
All right, I'm going to put this to you, Jeff Kerr. We're running out of time here. I saw Johnny McMullen write an article for SI about the backup left tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles. Not going to be Andre Dillard this year. They had him the last couple of years. He didn't achieve what he was supposed to as a first-round draft pick, but he was a pretty good backup left tackle, and the Eagles didn't have to sweat it when Mailata got hurt. They could plug in a pretty good replacement for him. Who's going to be the Eagles' backup left tackle this season?
Oh, boy, John McMullen probably knows this a heck of a lot better.
I'll get it. He already wrote his opinion, and he'll pass that along to us in just a second. But you first. Who's going to be the Eagles' backup left tackle? It's kind of an important position. You got your 22 starters, and then you got your order of importance of positions in backup slots. Left tackle's a pretty big one. Who's going to be the Eagles' backup left tackle?
Yeah, John, you just gave me something to watch for on Thursday now, but what? Can Jack Driscoll do it?
See, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
McMullen's got him down the list.
Well, I don't, Jack he did it for a little bit last year, and I think he did it better than they expected. So I actually think that's the default position going into camp is Jack Driscoll being the swing tackle. I think they hope somebody else develops. But the problem is, and this is why I wrote the story, is because I was talking to Jordan Mailata last week. I told this story on the show last week.
Yeah, you
Jody.
did.
Like Jordan knows everybody's name. He's one of those guys that learns our names, reporters' names. And Zach Berman asked him about the backup tackles, and he couldn't come up with Frank Johnson.
Oh, my God.
Or Roderick Johnson. And I'm like, what does that tell you? And those are the guys. And they signed an undrafted kid by the name of Trevor Reed, who is just like a Jeff Stoutland guy. I mean, he's super athletic. He's one of those guys that weighed 245 when he got to college. He put on weight. He's got a 38-inch vertical leap. He runs it like he runs fast. He's the most athletic tackle in the draft, but he's not strong enough, obviously. And it'll probably take a couple years. I think ultimately keep an eye on the name Trevor Reed. If he does anything in camp, I think that's the long term. Short term, I think it's going to be Jack Driscoll, swing tackle.
Do you think they bring in they sign DJ Fluker?
I think if they would have signed him, they would have signed him right away. So I'm going to say no for now. Now, if injuries pop up, obviously that could change things. But they got a lot of bodies. And, can DJ Fluker play left tackle? He can play right tackle. I don't know if he's better than Jack Driscoll. So
that's how I feel right now. It's
and just remember this: the Eagles like to throw that cross-training phrase around a lot. What happens if Driscoll is the best right guard?
Well, that's why I brought it up. That's what I put in the piece. it's all fine to say if Cam Jurgens is supposed to be the right guard and Tyler Steen, if they don't handle it, they're just going to put Jack Driscoll in because they know he can handle it. So people got to keep that in the back of their minds.
So
Jack Driscoll
Driscoll is not an Eagle starter, but he sounds like a pretty damn important player who could land in a couple of different spots for them this upcoming year.
He can play 4 positions for him. I just don't know if he can play center.
Yeah.
We shall see. Always a pleasure, Jeff Kerr. Go back to watching replays of whatever races you missed yesterday, or go out and bowl at 300.
You know what? The way I've been bowling, 300 isn't in the
Not
cards.
happening.
No,
maybe over 2 games. Oh, you're not down in the
I'm not that
150s,
big.
are you?
I laid an egg at States now, so it's on the Nationals. It's
okay. Yeah. Our national bowling entry, Jeff Kerr, will be representing Birds 365. Kerr, always a pleasure, bud. We'll get you back up in a couple of weeks.
Sounds great, boys. Thanks for having me on.
CBSSports.com's Jeff Kerr here with us on Birds 365. All right, Johnny Mac, Jody Mac coming back. One more guest to come about 20 minutes from now. We'll take a little bit of a wider version of the Eagles' national perspective, and we'll ask him some other National Football League questions as well. Matt Verderam joined Johnny Mac over at SI. Jump from Fanside into Sports Illustrated. Matt Verderam coming up in about 20 minutes.
Go to Ocean for our 5th birthday. Go for the parties and the payouts. Go for the dining and the unwinding. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the win.
Go, shorty. It's your birthday. We gon' party like it's your birthday.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
All right, did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really, don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, go to left, fake 'em out. Mama, go up, up, up.
She did it.
Again? You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. That makes this Birds 365 with your Mac and Mac buds. Thank Jeff Kerr for hopping on. Matt Verderam from Sports Illustrated is going to join us coming up in 15 minutes from now. Johnny Mac, we referenced the Eagles' offensive line last segment, and specifically left tackle, because I read and enjoyed the article you did for SI about no longer having Andre Dillard here as a safety net. Let me give you another couple of guys who are there on the offensive line who are not newbies, not rookies, but have been here before, but haven't been able to break through. And it's very difficult to break through the Eagles' offensive line since it's arguably the best in the entire National Football League. Josh Stills and Brett Toth. Where are they in the mix? And is their ability to move there? Is this a huge camp for him? Is Stoutland ready to anoint one of them, the backup left tackle? A couple of guys who've had their years here under, Sills is only 1 year and undrafted free agent last year. Toth's been here a couple of years. Where do you think they sit in the Eagles' overall offensive line depth chart?
Well, forget about Josh Hills. He's on the commissioner's exempt list. Had some very serious allegations of sexual assault late last season. If that works out in his favor from a legal standpoint, I got to be honest, I don't even think he's going to be back anyway. So
you think he would be released if not for the fact that he's on the suspended list anyway?
Exactly.
Okay.
So from Josh Sill's standpoint, if he gets a second chance, it's probably not going to be here. Brett Toth is an interesting guy. He's very versatile. You know, I mentioned him in that left tackle piece as well. That's in theory, his natural position. He can play everywhere. He can even play center. In fact, he tore his ACL week 18 of the 2021 season.
Right.
And he essentially missed all of last season. Now, he was healthy towards the latter part of the season, but the Eagles were so good on the offensive line, they just didn't need him. Then he did some maneuvering. They released him. They brought him back. He's another guy because of his versatility and literally can play all 5 positions. It wouldn't be surprising if he's on the roster. But they have so many good offensive linemen. You start talking about, all right, who are the backups going to be? Now, it's not as deep as they were last year, but you got to make room. If you assume Cam Jurgens is going to be the starter, obviously Tyler Steen's going to make the team. Obviously Jack Driscoll's going to make the team. Obviously, then
is Opeta a lock?
I would not say he's a lock. Then you start talking about if you're going to keep 9 guys, you got 2 spots and you have a lot of competition. I mentioned Fred Johnson, Roderick Johnson, Sue Opeta, Brett Toth. They're all in the conversation. So it's not as deep as it once was. But one thing about Jeff Stoutland last year was Sills, and obviously it didn't work out. He's the reason I lost the roster contest because I didn't have him making the team. He made the team. Jeff Stoutland tends to like to keep a developmental project, so to speak. That's where I brought up Trevor Reed. I think he's that guy this year. He's probably not going to be ready to play because they got to get him in an NFL weight room. They got to get him stronger, but he's so athletic. He's the most athletic tackle in the draft. That's how athletic he is. And I just think if he's got any technique whatsoever, I think Stoutland's going to fall in love with him. But that's just speculation.
So your guess would be practice squad for Reed? Because he went undrafted, as athletic as he may be, and you're referencing him as, no team used the draft pick on him. So will Eagles, if they do,
and that's why I brought up Sills. They kept Sills on the 53, and he was undrafted. And he doesn't have as much upside as Trevor Reed. So I think he's a threat to make the 53. I always joke, not just the Eagles, but all NFL teams like to keep at least one undrafted guy to point at themselves and say, look at me, look at how smart I am. Well, the Eagles kept 3 last year on what turned out to be a Super Bowl roster. They're going to keep 1 at the bare minimum, at least. And to me, Reed's in the conversation. If you want to look at Joseph Nada, wide receiver, he's probably in the conversation.
How about the DB from Alabama?
You know what? Eli Ricks, because of his reputation, but they're so deep at corner. I don't know how you fit him. I think he's more likely a practice squad candidate. Ben Van Sumeren, because of special teams, I think he's a candidate. I don't know. I mean, are you going to cut Greedy Williams? Maybe. They can. But I think, Eli Ricks is really going to have to play well this summer because they're so deep at corner. So deep at corner.
Does it come down to two Alabama corners, either Job or Ricks? One's here, one isn't.
Yeah, could be. Could, boy, Greedy Williams can play at all. I mean, both are in trouble. Both Josh Jobe and Eli Ricks from the 53, obviously.
From a number standpoint, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, you start talking about, because Ringo's making the team. So you have the top three, Slay, Bradbury, Avonte Maddox, they're making the team. We're talking about Ricks. Mekhi Gardner from LSU is another high-profile undrafted guy. Goodrich was here last year. I didn't even bring up Zach McPherson. Josiah Scott. I mean, they're absurdly deep at cornerback.
Let me go to a couple of those guys. Josiah Scott last year. No, they actually gave up a draft pick to get him, and that factors in, I think, in the thinking of who makes it and who doesn't. Shouldn't much, but it does. And if I'm accusing the Eagles of this, I'm accusing the other 31 teams in the National Football League for doing the same thing. Once you get a guy, you should just evaluate how he fits, what levels he playing to, make your call off that. You should forget what it costs you to actually get the guy, but teams don't do that. He's got a leg up because he's specifically a slot corner, and the Eagles think highly of him as a slot corner. Is that justified? If you're just looking at the corner talent and putting them in an order, and you should keep the top guys, does Josiah Scott actually make it over a guy who might be an actual better cornerback just because he's a better slot corner?
Yeah, I mean, it factors in because they're different positions, and outside corners generally can't play in the slot, and vice versa, to be honest. It's become a more specialized game. So, yeah, if Josiah Scott isn't going to make the team, they have to find somebody else who can back up Avonte Maddox, who obviously, missed 7-8 games last year with injuries. So that's a very important position. Now, I've always speculated from day one that Zach McPherson is better suited to play inside than outside. That's the way I would go. I would say, all right, I'm moving Zach. I have Kelee Ringo now. I have Greedy Williams. I have Josh Jobe. I have Eli Ricks. I'm moving Zach McPherson inside, which I think is his natural position. I don't know if the Eagles are going to do that, but that would make sense to me. And then Josiah Scott's the odd man looking in. They have a lot of options at corner. A lot of options.
They got a lot of names. I want to see them actually play. Some of the guys who've not.
Well, I'm comparatively speaking to other teams. I mean, obviously, look, if Slay or Bradbury go down, you're screwed. I mean, but I'm talking. I hope people understand. I'm talking in relative terms. They're better options. The Eagles have better options than other teams if they lost their starting corners. Wouldn't be good. You've seen it in short bursts with Zach McPherson when Slade went down with a couple concussion issues. Not good. This year it should be better because you have Ringo, who's a natural outside corner, Greedy Williams, who's a natural outside corner. Should be a little bit better, but I don't want to see that. I don't want to see those guys play. Ringo, 2-3 years down the road, I think they have legitimate hope that he'll turn into a big-time starting corner, but that's for down the road.
No, I'll readily admit, shame on me. I've forgotten some of the names, and it was only 2 years ago when we started Birds 365. But they had a couple guys on the roster that they fucked up a blue streak as backup cornerback.
Yeah,
did they not, Johnny Mac? Could you quickly remind me?
Oh yeah, Kerry Vincent Jr.
Kerry Vincent, where's he these days?
I think it was in the XFL.
Okay, who else?
Mac McCain, our old
Mac
buddy.
McCain, what's Mac McCain up to? You and Mac are friends on Facebook, right? You know where Mac McCain is.
He was in Detroit. I got to look up where he is now. He's a free agent. So, and I forget the third one. Mac McCain, Kerry. Tay Gowan.
Oh, they talked Tay Gowan up a blue streak. Yeah. They traded for him, didn't they?
Yes. They trade. He was part of the Zach Ertz trade.
Zach Ertz deal. Yeah.
Tay Gowan. He's in.
When you tell me the Eagles have all this great cornerback depth, those names pop into my head.
But I told you.
I actually see it with my own two eyes on the field in Philadelphia Eagle green. They're prospects. Prospects are not givens until they actually get a chance.
Oh,
to
sure.
Go out and get it done on the field.
But Kelee Ringo is a much bigger prospect than any of those three. And I told you at the time that they were full of shit. They were talking up a blue streak with those three guys. They legitimately like Kelee Ringo. Brady Williams, look, coming out, he was a big-time prospect. Obviously, things did not go the way they were supposed to go in Cleveland, but he was a big-time prospect coming out of LSU. Mac McCain was not. Tay Gowan was not. Kerry Vincent was not. Kerry Vincent from LSU as well was not a big-time prospect, though. Different level of prospects from a talent standpoint, at least from a trait standpoint.
And give me the reasoning again as to why Kelee Ringo, I would say almost most mock guys had him going in the second round. Why did he fall in the draft again? The Eagles were able to get him where they
shoulder. Got him? He had a some teams thought it was a degenerative shoulder condition. Eagles, I think there's a lot of, when you say red flag, medical red flag, I think a lot of people assume, they hear you take them off the board, at least with the Eagles and most teams, I think, but definitely with the Eagles. When they red flag somebody, till day 3. And then they'll consider it. And I think that's what happened with Ringo. So a lot of teams concerned over his shoulder. He says it's fine. I think it's good value in the 4th round. Might not work out, but he's got a lot of talent. As you mentioned, I saw a lot of people having him in the 1st round, late 1st round. A lot of people having him as bridge pick, late 1st round, early 2nd round. They got him in the early 4th round, traded up to get him. It's good value.
Right. If he reaches the level he's supposed to reach. If the shoulder issue is a degenerative one, it's a waste of a 4th round pick. We don't know where it's going to land.
I just think it's a good gamble at that point. In the early 2nd round, probably not a good gamble. Early 4th round, probably a good gamble from my standpoint.
Exactly. But then you actually get to go out there on the field and we find out whether it was a good gamble or a bad gamble. If he doesn't make the team, if he's cut before the season ever starts, and they probably won't do that, probably try and get him to the practice squad. And if somebody else then takes a chance on him, yeah, it'll turn out to be a bad gamble. I do judge the results after the fact. You can say right now, hey, good gamble, 2nd round talent that you get in the 4th round, that's a good gamble. And
well, I will say this, he's going to make the team. There's no way they're trying to get him to the practice squad. Even if he plays poorly in training camp, he's on the 53. And if he's not, he's on injured reserve because he's hurt. There's no way they're going to try to get him to the practice squad.
Fair enough. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald with the Mac Birds 365. Guys, coming up next, Matt Verderam from Sports Illustrated. Going to jump in here with us on Birds 365.
Go to Ocean for our 5th birthday. Go for the parties and the payouts. Go for the dining and the unwinding. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the win.
Go, shorty. It's your birthday. We gon' party like it's your birthday.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
All right, did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really, don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, I go to left, fake 'em out. Mama, go up, mama!
She did it.
again.
You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Birds 365 here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Thanks for streaming in with Mac and Mac. We are lucky to have Matt Verderam of Sports Illustrated join us today. Matty V, I hope you had a good Memorial Day. I'm putting you right to the test. I've got the same exact over-under number for two players that I'm going to make you give me a yay or nay on. Touchdown passes this season, the number is 1/2 for Jimmy Garoppolo and Tom Brady. Over-under touchdown passes for Garoppolo and Brady, 1/2. You going over or under on each?
I will go over on Garoppolo, and I will go under on Brady.
Okay.
But I think this Garoppolo thing is all the makings of a full-blown disaster for the Raiders.
Yeah, how would that work, Matt? I don't know if you've done enough research yet, but if Tom wants to come back again, you know, I think it's becoming clearer and clearer, at least it should be, that Josh McDaniels is a one-trick pony, and that one trick is probably Tom Brady. So from his standpoint, he would certainly like Tom running that offense. But if he's the owner of the team, I assume he's got to divest from the team he just bought. How would that even work if he wanted to come out of retirement again?
I would think that if he owns the team, he could play for that team. He couldn't play anywhere else. He couldn't own the Raiders and play for the Dolphins, but I would think he could play for the team that he owns. I'll be the first to admit.
I saw a thing on Pro Football Talk this weekend. Florio said if one owner in the National Football League wanted to block it, he could. They could say, no, you can't own the team and play for a team. The only one would have to object, and then he would either have to divest himself of his interest or give up his attempt to return to the National Football League.
Gotcha. I was going to say, I've never done research on that because, frankly,
Why would you?
Why would you? Right. I don't expect Clark Hunt to come down and take some snaps. I just don't see that happening. But
that's funny.
It's just something where, if you think back to March when Garoppolo signed there, he initially was going to have a presser. I think it was like on a Wednesday or something, and then it got delayed. It got delayed for a day, and it was said at the time, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. It's just some clerical thing. And then he went on and had it the next day. And you do wonder, like, how does that happen on a 3-year deal worth over $65 million? Like, you still sign this contract knowing that he's going to have foot surgery. I mean, this is a guy who has had 9 NFL seasons entering this year. He has started more than 10 games twice. And so you decided to have this contract done anyway, and then had no backup plan. Like, the one thing I have written about McDaniels this offseason, and frankly, it's one of my takes, it's aging more like a fine wine than most. Like, the Raiders are doing what every other team has done that has a former Patriots coach as its coach. They just go out and they find everybody who's ever been in Foxborough, and they just bring these people in. And it's like, well, we're going to replicate that. No, you're not, because you don't have Belichick and you don't have Brady. And you're not Belichick, and Garoppolo's not Brady. And so if you go and look at their offseason, it's been Garoppolo. It's been Philip Dorsett, former Patriot. It's been Jacoby Myers, former Patriot. It's Brian Hoyer as the backup, former Patriot. Like, it's just – and Patricia did this in Detroit. They brought in 15 ex-Patriots. Like, that's a third of the roster they brought in.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, and it's going to be the same result. They're not going to be good, and we're going to hear a whole lot about why does McDaniels still have a job at the end of this season.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think they should. It's amazing. Josh McDaniels is one of those names that kind of amazes me because of his history. Obviously, he may be the most ill-prepared rookie head coach I ever saw the first time.
Yeah.
And Nathaniel Hackett
worse
probably
than Nathaniel Hackett.
Yeah. Ironically, it was Denver both times.
Doing a good job.
Yeah. Until Nathaniel Hackett, maybe we can have that discussion. And
Urban
then
Meyer also would like a strong word.
Urban, good one.
Got
good
about
one,
Urban.
Urban Meyer was unbelievable.
Yeah, unbelievably bad. Urban Meyer probably lapsed the field. You're probably right. This was at the time I thought Josh was. People have lapped the field. Then he left Indianapolis at the altar. So, I mean, that completely unprofessional. And they give him another. And the Eagles almost hired him, by the way, before they hired Nick Sirianni. But I digress. Because we're an Eagles show, as you can imagine, Matt, a lot of D-Hop, more. Give me more. I got A.J. Brown. Give me DeAndre Hopkins. To me, it's ridiculous. I don't even give it 2 seconds of thought, especially when you look at Kansas City. Actually, obviously is a Super Bowl contender. They have a good quarterback, and they have a need at receiver. Buffalo has a need at receiver, Super Bowl contender, great quarterback. Why in the heck would DeAndre Hopkins even consider Philadelphia?
Well, I think that's probably like every fan base in the league wants DeAndre Hopkins because they're fans, and I get that. But if you're the Eagles, do you need DeAndre Hopkins? No, you don't. Does Howie Roseman spend what's probably going to be a pretty hefty 1-year deal on Hopkins? No, probably doesn't spend there because you know what? You'd rather have that cap space for other things to roll over even. And look, it's not like the Eagles have so much cap space that they don't know what to do with, right? I mean, I think that's the one thing too. A lot of times fans will just say, well, just restructure contracts and do whatever you've got to do. And it's like, there's a price to pay for that.
At some point, the bill comes due. Exactly right.
Unless you're in New Orleans, in which case the bill is going to be somebody else's problem eventually. And Mickey Loomis is like the guy who's just leveraged out his house, but he's 90, so he doesn't care. You know what? Not my problem. Leave it to the kids. Like, and the kids are just like, oh my God, we're going to owe $250,000 on a house. But in any event, the Eagles, Like, why put yourself in a tough position for a player you don't need? Like people, like I said, it's always about restructuring. I'll give you an example. So the Bills do have a need there, and it would make a lot of sense, and they've been interested in it. But to sign DeAndre Hopkins, they're gonna have to restructure contracts. Well, if you look at the Bills' cap sheet for next year, they are massively over the projected cap next year. Like, to move money down the road for them is a real problem. They could do it, but it's a real issue. It becomes harder to move on from players. You start guaranteeing more money later in deals. I mean, that's a concern. The Chiefs, if they wanted to do it, could a little easier because they have that Mahomes deal that just stretches on forever. And so they could just split $23 million that they could move down the road over the next 8 years, and it doesn't really affect them as much. They kind of have a get out of jail free card with that most teams don't because of the length of Mahomes' contract. That said, I don't know that the Chiefs are going to make a move here on this because they've shown under Brett Veach, they have a price, and they are going to stick to that price. If you don't believe me, ask Tyreek Hill. Like, they are going to get to a certain number and say, that's our number. Deal with it. Either take it or leave it. And some players have taken it. Some players have left it. Charvarius Ward's another example of that. The Chiefs really wanted him back in free agency a year ago. They had a number, and San Francisco went over it. Juju Smith-Schuster this year, they wanted to bring him back. New England superseded that number. See you. Fine. So I think it's going to be interesting. I would not be shocked if he ended up in Kansas City or Buffalo, if it ends up being a number that becomes palatable. But frankly, I would bet that it ends up somewhere where he can make more money than he would make with one of those two teams.
That's what I was saying all weekend. And I threw this team out there as a possibility. You can comment on it because you're a Chicago guy. I'm going to bet that D-Hop all of a sudden reevaluates that list of the quarterbacks he wants to play with. He didn't have Justin Fields on to start, but if the Bears, who have more cap room than anybody else in the National Football League, put forth the best deal, all of a sudden Justin Fields is going to become one of those very good young quarterbacks that DeAndre Hopkins wants to play with. Chance the Bears get involved on Hopkins.
It's possible because right now they have more, and then they have question marks with guys like Chase Claypool and Darnell Mooney, and you could. I mean, I'm always a proponent of if you're a team that's not maybe projected to be really good, if you can get him to sign, even if it's at a contract you're not in love with, but it's 1 year, why not sign the guy? If he plays the whole year for you and he's really good, you get a nice compensatory pick, if I can say the word. You get a compensatory pick, depending upon how your free agency goes, because you might cancel it out. But if you're not that active, you'll get the pick. Or trade him in the middle of the year and get a pick that way. Like, you're basically buying a draft pick. So I don't understand why teams don't do it more often. Now, if you're Hopkins, maybe you say, look, I don't want to go play for a team that's going to go 6-11, and that's fine. But money typically talks in the NFL. And so, like, one of the teams I look at, and I did a piece on SI the day he got cut, is like 5 teams to watch. Like, Detroit's a team to me that makes a ton of sense. Detroit has a ton of money. Jameson Williams is suspended the first 6 games of the year. They have Amon-Ra St. Brown, but like, who else? Who else do they have? If I'm the Lions, I'm all in for him. And frankly, if I'm Hopkins, I don't hate that. They're a favorite in the division. You get to play in a dome. You're playing it with a quarterback. You know about Jared Goff, who for 4,400 yards and touchdowns a year ago.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't think that's the worst case scenario. I'll give you another team that the money would be tight, but the Giants. You want to talk about a team that needs a receiver. I mean, the Giants need one in the worst way, and you just paid Daniel Jones $40 million a year. Like, you better prop him up in every possible way. Mm-hmm. Now, again, the finances there for the Giants, it's not as easy. The Lions don't even have to do anything. They can just sign him. But those are a couple teams to also consider. And like, you know what? We all know how this works. Would you really be shocked if you woke up tomorrow and all of a sudden it's like, hey, the Titans signed him? I mean,
yeah.
It's just the way this stuff works. Who's got the money and who just decides to go for it?
Yeah. That's always. I remember J.J. Watt, people talking about, playing for a contender. Then bang, all of a sudden, it's always about the money. It's always not 99%. It's about the money. And we'll see. You mentioned the Giants, Matt. I think most people, and I get, I'm sure you get the betting odds, DeAndre Hopkins' next team. I was surprised to see not the Giants, the Dallas Cowboys at the top of the list. it's not a typical. I mean, brawl to talk, Jerry Jones doesn't do a lot in free agency. It's not a splashy guy from that perspective. They don't have a glaring need. They have a need. They don't have a ton of cap space. Why are the Cowboys number one in the betting markets? Just because of the Cowboys?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is sucker bets, right? You can just get people to throw money down. And there's also that, for right or wrong, there's always that thought that if a star is available, Jerry Jones is going to put in a phone call. Now, I would argue, looking at the Cowboys, look, you traded for Brandon Cooks this offseason. You have CeeDee Lamb, who is a perennial Pro Bowl receiver. What are you going to do? You're going to put Hopkins outside. Okay, Lamb's going to go back into the slot. You're going to, okay, I mean, you can do it, but I don't know. I mean, does that, like, the one thing talking about betting odds, no matter who signs DeAndre Hopkins, the betting odds are not going to change much just in terms of like who's going to win the Super Bowl. I mean, it's not like it's going to, this isn't like a top 10 quarterbacks on the market. And whoever signs this guy, everything's going to radically change. Hopkins is a nice piece. He's a really good player. Like I am still in the camp that I think he's got plenty in the tank. I still think he can be an excellent, excellent player for you. But like if you're Dallas, I don't know how much that moves the needle. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't help. Of course it helps. He's an excellent player. But I don't, like in the end, if they're going to win the Super Bowl, if they're going to get past Philly in the NFC East, like it's going to largely be about the coaching. It's going to largely be about Dak not making big mistakes. It's going to be about that line holding up, which has had injury issues the last couple of years. I'm not saying that he wouldn't help them, but to me, like Dallas, it's more about Dallas not beating itself all the time. And I don't know that DeAndre Hopkins is all of a sudden going to magically fix some of the ills that have befallen Dallas in the last handful of years.
And I did over the weekend see, I forget where I saw it. I apologize for not remembering. That Michael Gallup has looked good returning from injury. Now, we're talking shorts. How good can you look in shorts? You got to think. I get out there on the field, but I did see a story about, hey, Gallup looks good. So I'm with you. I don't think that's where D-Hop is landing. All right. Player-specific, position-specific question for you, Matty V, because Johnny and I both like the player, both acknowledge Eagles have a need. I'd be willing to pay a little bit more. Johnny Mac's holding the line, like you said, that the Chiefs hold their line. They got their number and they'll go to it. But then if they got to let a guy walk, they'll let a guy walk. I'm willing to go beyond. Eagles need an upgrade at linebacker. Nicholas Morrow is right now one of their off-ball linebackers who is ranked well down in starting linebackers. You watched him play in Chicago this past year. He is an NFL player, but he's not a needle mover in any way, shape, or form. And he is right now a starting linebacker for him. And it would only make sense that Howie Roseman would be looking to upgrade. Last year, they got Bradbury in June. They got C.J. Gardner-Johnson a week before the season started. A guy who I think will hit the market, will at least be discussed, is Patrick Queen of the Baltimore Ravens.
I agree.
They took a linebacker early in the draft. He's on the last year of his rookie deal. They haven't been able to get a contract extension done with him. Only they have not chosen not to pick up the fifth-year option of that rookie deal. I think he's a borderline Pro Bowler. Hasn't gotten there yet, but the trend up last year tells me he's going to, and would be willing to give up a third-round draft pick for him. Johnny Mac says day 3 or not happening. Howie Roseman's not going day 2 for him. Will Patrick Queen be traded? How much do you or don't you like the player?
I like him. In fact, I just wrote a piece over the weekend. It hasn't been published yet. I think it's going to get published later this week, I believe, where I listed 10 veteran players that might get moved or cut or traded, however you want to determine it, before the season started. And Queen's on that list. And when you look at him last year, he was pretty damn good for Baltimore. He had 117 tackles. He had 5 sacks as a linebacker. He hit the quarterback 14 times. He knocked away 6 passes. He had 2 picks. I mean, that's a great year. That's a really, really good year for a linebacker going into his 4th season, who out of LSU was thought to be a very, very good player. No, I think that would be a Philly, no pun intended, a Philly special, right? I think that would be something that Howie Roseman is great at finding undervalued players and plugging him into their system, and then that player flourishes. And you're right. Look, I was surprised that the Ravens didn't pick up Queen's option, but when you're paying Roquan Smith $100 million, you've kind of invested it in a way that you're not going to pay another linebacker. So Queen, if you're the Ravens, if you got an offer of a 3rd round pick, I think you'd move him. I think you absolutely would move him. I think you'd probably even move him for a 4th round pick. Like, I think at this point, if you're Baltimore, you might as well get something for him. And I don't, look, they're going to treat this like they're all into winning a Super Bowl this year. I am not one that believes that Baltimore is a Super Bowl contender. I think they're fine. I think they'll be in the hunt for the playoffs. Might even very well be a playoff team. I don't know. I mean, are they better than Cincinnati or Kansas City or Buffalo or even Miami or Jacksonville? I don't know. Probably not, in my opinion. So, yeah, I think that would be a great pickup for Philadelphia. And this year, he's cheap. He's still on his rookie deal. And then after that, you'd have to figure it out. But yeah, I think Queen would be a huge get for the Eagles, and I think that he will be available.
So if the price is a 3rd round draft pick, you're Howie Roseman, you're giving it up, or you're going, no, I'll wait till you drop it down to a 4th round pick?
Yeah, I'd probably try to get it there. I'd probably try to get him down into day 3, because you're getting 1 year of him, and he's not a premium position. So I'd probably be like, look, you don't like the guy enough to, to pick up his option. So, I'd offer him like a 5th, and I'd be willing to go to a 4th. But I probably would hold off on giving him a 3rd, unless something happens in camp where guys get hurt and you're really desperate. Then okay, maybe. I mean, the one thing to factor in Philly, of course, is the pick's always going to be late in the round. So there is that. But I would try to get him for a day 3 pick.
What's going to happen in camp is Nicholas Morrow is going to be Nicholas Morrow, and that's why they're going to need to reach out.
That's possible. From Baltimore's perspective, I noticed, I don't want to call it a trend, but you had, I think it was McGarry in Atlanta. Josh Jacobs would be the most high-profile example. Bradbury in Minnesota. Guys, teams declining options, letting them play out, and then re-signing the player. A little bit more common than it used to be. It used to be when you didn't pick up that option, you were like done with that guy. Right. Done. From Baltimore's perspective, I agree with you. I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender. The AFC is a murderer's row, but I think they're a really good team. Why not just play out the season with them? As you mentioned, still cost effective. If he plays better, gets better, he leaves, you get a compensatory pick. Why even move him if you're Baltimore?
Well, you're right. I mean, look, I think, you could look at it that way and say if you're the Ravens, maybe you just say, you know what, he is cheap this year. We're going to play this thing out. And then if he walks, we get the compensatory. Now, the other side of that is you don't get the compensatory if you sign other players.
Yeah.
So then it cancels.
Yeah.
Or is he miserable being there? Does he just not want to be there? I mean, a couple of years ago, Orlando Brown did not want to be there, and they traded him to the Chiefs, which shocked everybody. I mean, they sent him over there, and now he's on the Bengals. So I think it depends. I think for the Ravens, they're probably going to hold out for a price they want, which to Jody's point, maybe they're like, look, the only way we'll trade him is for a day 2 pick. It's the only way we're going to do it. And then if you're the Eagles or anybody else, you have a decision to make. And if I'm the Eagles, I probably wouldn't give him that pick, but maybe they would. Maybe they'd say, you know what? We feel like he's a missing piece for us, and it's worth it. I think the problem with Queen specifically for the Ravens is what I said earlier about Roquan. When you pay a guy $100 million, like let's say that Patrick Queen goes out and he has a great year, and he's a Pro Bowler and maybe even in like second team All-Pro conversation. Are you going to pay him what the Bears just paid Edmonds? Like, are you going to pay him, let's say $19 million a year because, inflation, all that. Let's say it's 4 years and $76 million. Are you going to pay 2 linebackers or off-ball linebackers $176 million? You can't. You just paid Lamar Jackson $51 million a year, right? So that's where I think it gets difficult. At some point, you got to figure out who you can pay and who you can't. And so, I think the Giants right now are kind of going through this with Saquon. Like, you just paid Dexter Lawrence, which is fine. He's a great player. You also pay Daniel Jones. Like, are you now also going to turn around and give a running back record-setting money? You have to at some point pay a receiver. You got to find a receiver. They paid Galladay. It didn't work out. Like, you're going to have to pay Andrew Thomas a fortune at tackle. That's coming, right? So you've got Leonard Williams and team that you got to pay. He's paid, right? Already. He's already paid. You might pay him again. Like, at some point, you've got to decide who you can pay and who you can't. And that's why I kind of go full circle on this. Like, with a guy like Hopkins, everybody's like, well, the Chiefs make a ton of sense. And they do. Yeah. Chiefs paying a lot of guys. You know, it's like, that's hard. It's not easy to just magically pay him $20 million. And Brett Veach has got to go to Clark Hunt and go, Clark, listen, we can fit it under the cap, but like, you got $20 million under the pillow? Because we're going to need that. And Clark Hunt's like, get lost. I already gave you my budget for the year, and you already pushed me 3 times for more money. You know, so I think sometimes the NFL is a business where people look at the cap and they just go like, oh, that's not a problem. It's like, yeah, but in this case, like with Queen, Steve Bisciotti is going to be like, I'm not paying almost $200 million to 2 linebackers. There's no way we're doing that. Yeah. You know, so I think it becomes complicated.
All right, Matty, want to jump into a specific position, different one with you. You mentioned Barkley and what are the Giants going to do? They franchise tagged him. Jacob's got the franchise tag in Vegas. 2 running backs were taken in the first round. One relatively high, the other one surprisingly high by the Lions. We saw last year in the NFL an uptick of the running game. Not a massive one, but certainly an uptick. More running, more leaning on the run. Teams ran the ball more and ran it more effectively, yards per carry. Same thing this year, another uptick, level off. Was that just a 1-year spike and teams are all going to go back to throwing the ball 85% of the time? What do you think league-wide the trend of running the football with backs is going to be this season?
I think it's probably going to keep going up in the sense that, you know, teams defensively now are just playing to take away the pass. I mean, teams defensively, like we all know, look, the NFL's cyclical, okay? In the 50s, teams were throwing the ball. The Rams throwing the ball like crazy, and it started this big trend of throwing the ball. And then the 60s, it became this knuckles in the dirt. We're going to run the ball, play defense. And that kind of went through the 70s. And then all of a sudden, you had like, you know, Bradshaw in 78 with the Mel Blount rule and so on. And like everything, Marino in 84. And it's cyclical. In the 90s, you ran more. I think what's going to start happening is you're just going to have these teams that sitting too high and say you're not throwing the ball. We're going to have smaller, quicker, athletic linebackers, and we're going to use them to play coverage. And our defensive linemen, we're going to get up the field. I mean, I remember, I'm 34. So in the 90s, I remember guys like Gilbert Brown on the Packers who were like 300 and God knows what he was listed at, but like 360 pounds. Yeah. And all his job was just to eat a double team and stand there. And like, that was it. And, you know, you think about even a guy like a Reggie White, of course, a great player, but like a bigger guy, I mean, a bigger man right off the edge. He would be like a D tackle right now. I mean, look at Aaron Donald, who's the best defensive player of his generation. Aaron Donald, by weight standards, is tiny.
Yep.
But it's all about now, hey, get up the field, penetrate, speed. Don't worry about the runner. You know, hey, get to the quarterback. And if the ball carrier happens to be there, try to hit him too. Like, and I think teams are saying, you know what? If you're going to play that small up front and you're going to play your safeties back and your corners can't tackle anyway because nobody tackles anymore at corner. Very few guys do anyway because it's all about coverage. We're going to run the ball at you because it's effective numbers-wise. And so I don't think we're ever going to go back to where, you know, teams are on the ball 40 times a game. But I do think you're going to go back to a little bit more of a balanced attack. Now, in the case of Gibbs and Robinson, I was surprised, frankly. I was surprised with Gibbs going to Detroit. I wasn't surprised Robinson went to Atlanta. There was a ton of smoke about that, but I don't love the pick, honestly. Like, Algier was there, and he ran for 1,000 yards as a rookie last year on 5 yards a clip. I don't get it. Like, if you're the Falcons, you don't have a bigger problem than your running back. And then Arthur Smith says, well, he's going to be like an offensive weapon. We're going to move him all over the field. Let me be the first to say, and if I'm wrong, I'll get all the crow in the world. That never works.
Never. It never works, Matt.
Because guys need to have a position. They need to know what they're doing. Yes. They need to know their role. It's like the Cardinals for a couple of years are like, we now draft positionless defenders. And you know what those guys are? Free agents. Okay? that you can't do that.
It drives me nuts.
The Panthers tried to do that with Shaq Thompson, and until they finally committed to a position, he was not good. Yeah. Like, you need to just let a guy be what he is. Bijan Robinson is a running back. If the Falcons start treating him like he's Jerry Rice, it's going to be a problem. I promise you. So I do think we're going to see an uptick in running a little bit because of the way defenses are playing. But I still think, frankly, it's bad business to draft a running back that high unless that guy is just a generational, like, hey, look, he's Adrian Peterson in his prime. Yeah. Or he's Derrick Henry. Okay, fine. But unless he's that, I don't like the pick.
You're speaking to the choir. Jody can tell you, Matt. Manufactured touch players. Everybody, that's off-season talk. Everybody talks about it, and then other than Kyle Shanahan. And by the way, Christian McCaffrey, who is the best receiver out of the backfield, maybe I have ever seen, 6.4 times per game did he line up at receiver. And that was lapping the field. Yet everybody talks about it every year. And we had it through the whole draft process, Matt. We had people, well, you just play Bijan Robinson in the slot. No, you don't. You don't do that. You're giving the worst slot cornerback in a league a day off if you're not putting a slot receiver as a slot receiver.
And that's the other part of this. Like, let's say the Falcons are playing the Eagles, okay? And they line Bijan Robinson up against Darius Slay. Darius Slay's going to be like, that's nice. Like, go ahead. What, you're running a full route tree? You're going to come out of it? You're going to run a comeback route on me? Like, what? I mean, I don't think people fully understand the NFL, like how incredible the worst guy in the team is, like how incredibly talented these guys are. Yeah. It's an insult to everybody's brains that, like, hey, listen, we're going to trot a running back out and we're going to turn this guy, like, Christian McCaffrey, by the way, terrific player. He was traded by the Panthers because the Panthers were like, you know what? First of all, we're in a rebuild, and that's fine. We need to get the picks. But also, that contract was kind of a disaster.
Yeah.
That contract, now, McCaffrey had a good year last year. But for as great as he is, McCaffrey's been in 2 Pro Bowls his entire career.
Well,
it's not as if, I mean, I think sometimes McCaffrey gets treated like he's going to the Hall of Fame. He's been in 2 Pro Bowls. Yeah. So, and you're right. Like, he's the best dual threat of his generation. But how many guys are Marshall Faulk?
Even Marshall Faulk, by the way, LaDainian Tomlinson.
That's why I was going LT.
As great as they are, they're not receivers. They're successful because they're matching up against linebackers and safeties.
Yeah.
The minute you put a corner, an NFL corner on them, they're done. They're done. So if you signal, oh, he's playing receiver, you lose the matchup advantage. Yes. It's simple to me. It drives me crazy.
And the only backs who have ever and maybe I'm forgetting like one guy or something. The only backs who've ever really, really moved the needle on a good to great team in terms of their pass catching abilities. Roger Craig, Marshall Faulk, Tomlinson never won a Super Bowl, but they were good for a long time, so I'll put him on there. I mean, Larry Centers was a great pass catching back, but like never played on.
Yeah, he was a safety valve guy.
I mean, Ricky Waters could catch the ball. And I know Philly. I know, for who, for what, and all that.
For what? Yeah, you can't be throwing that one out of here, man.
Right. I know Philly that doesn't fly, but he was a good player. But like the point being, it's rare. Like it's rare that like you're just going to throw the ball to your back 90 times, like an Eckler right now, right? Who's a guy who had over 100 catches last year. But like that offense stunk. That offense just flips the ball out 3 yards a clip. Like, it's rare. It's not, I'm not saying it doesn't help and it's not nice to have that, but like, if your offense is relying on your running back beating a corner on a slant route, your offense is going to suck. Like that's the bottom line. And so I am not big on this whole, like, it's a matchup nightmare. Yes, for you. It's a matchup nightmare for you. That is the problem. And by the way, if you have your running back out wide and the other team blitzes you, who's picking that up?
Right.
You have a second back on the field then? Are you taking off another receiver? Like, what are you doing? Because somebody better be home to pick up, because I don't think Desmond Ridder is going to be able to just pick everything up after his 4 starts he had last year. That's a real problem.
Matty V, always a pleasure. We've already kept you half an hour. No full well when we call you a month from now, we'll be asking you how the Eagles stall of running backs, and they got a bunch that they got to figure out how to use. Will be catching the ball out of the backfield or in the slot or not in the slot or not out of the backfield, and who's going to get the ball. Next time we'll talk about Eagles-specific running back. Appreciate you coming on. Last thing, you got the article coming up on veterans who could be traded or cut between now
June
and
1st,
start
baby.
of the
June
season.
1st.
Yeah, that'll be coming out over at Sports Illustrated this week. I don't know the exact date. It's later in the week. And then we have team previews coming out starting next week, day after day, all the way up till training camp. I'll be writing half those. My colleague Gilberto Manzano will be writing the rest. We have a ton of stuff coming. I've got some pieces coming. I was just in Green Bay for 3 days. Spent some time with Jordan Love. So I'll have a piece coming out exclusively on him. That'll be a little bit later on in June. There's a lot. Check it out. Follow me on Twitter if you'd like it, my name. And you'll see all kinds of thoughts, including on the Knicks when I'm just angry at the Knicks. So anything you want, it's there.
Knicks and Sixers, our squad here in Philly went down at the same exact time, same round. Matty, always a pleasure, bud. Appreciate it. We'll be checking you out on SI.com. And like I said, we'll get you back on in a month and talk about the Eagles running backs. Thanks for doing it today.
Thanks,
Anytime,
man.
guys. Take care.
Matt Verderam, outstanding NFL writer for Sports Illustrated. All right, Johnny Mac coming back. You know what we got to do? Put a bow on this show.
Go
to Ocean for our 5th birthday. Go for the parties and the payouts. Go for the dining and the unwinding. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the win.
Go, shorty. It's your birthday. We gon' party like it's your birthday.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Bird!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Bird!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
All right, did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, I go to left, fake 'em out. Mama, go up, mama!
She did it.
again.
You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Mag and Mac, putting a wrap on a Tuesday edition of Birds 365. Thank both Matt Verderam and Jeff Kerr for jumping in with us today. All right, so Thursday, you guys are going to get to go down and actually watch the entire Eagle. Can you call it a practice? Is it a gathering? They're not hitting.
Well, yeah, it's a
They're not-
practice. OTA
It's a practice?
practice, baby. Yeah.
Okay. all right.
Probably an hour. would be my guess.
I'm going 65 minutes. Taskmaster that Nick Sirianni is, I say he goes over an hour by about 5 minutes. Just one quickie, and you're going to ask whatever question you are, and I'm not going down there on Thursday, so for me to ask you to do this, I wouldn't do it to you, but I'll ask you if you think someone else will. You think anybody asks Lane Johnson? And again, you get a couple of veterans, you don't know who they're going to be, whoever the Eagles so desire to make available to you. You can scream questions at them if they're coming off the field, and maybe they choose to answer or they don't answer. Anybody going to ask Lane Johnson if this is it?
We already asked Lane that a bunch of times last year. He said, "No, it's not it for him." He said 2 years, and I'll start thinking about it last year. He has no plans to retire, but yeah, we'll ask him that. I wish we could scream questions at the players as they leave the field. We can't at this stage. You know, back in the old days, they would open the locker room so you could go up to anybody you wanted if they were there. They don't open the locker room to the regular season now. COVID, blah, blah, blah. They never changed it back. So we're at the mercy of who they bring up to the podium. But yeah, Lane is very honest. We've asked him, you know, and for the first time last year, he said, you know, you start to think about it, but I don't think you have to worry about it this year.
Okay. Glad to hear. I'd love to hear him confirm it one more time so we know we got Lane for at least 2 more years. Kind of a key, because I don't know if either you or I are on the record. This is it for Kelce, right? Percentage chance?
I think so. But I said that last year. But he said that last year. In fact, Lane is the one who told me Jason said that last year. So he's always he can change his mind, but I think why I'm even more convinced this year than last year that this is it for Jason, and partially because he's having so much time, and I know we got to leave doing the podcast and all that stuff. I think this is it for Jason Kelce.
That's something we'll be talking about all year long here on Birds 365. Thanks for streaming in today. I'll be back here tomorrow. McMullen will be back here tomorrow, correct?
Yeah, day to day. Hopefully you get through the police questioning. You know, don't let him in on the other stuff, Jody.
We shall see. But I'm off to spend my day talking to insurance people and police and everything else. Oh, a lot of fun. But despite all that, John McMullen, Jody McDonald will be back here tomorrow on Birds 365 in 2 and 2.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate, inside the locker room, and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.